Before there was light, before time even knew how to move, before humanity ever asked questions about its own existence, there was a truth that should make anyone shiver if they dare to face it. The universe did not begin by accident. It began with a will, a decision, a single command powerful enough to tear open the original darkness and wake everything up from nothingness. Pause for a moment and picture it. No sound, no direction, no concept of before or after. Only an endless depth of darkness. And then in that absolute silence, a presence moves, not in chaos, not in haste, but with intention. Not through violence, not through impulse, only through speech. Let there be light. And light appeared. That moment did not just give birth to the first day. It gave birth to meaning. Light did not merely separate from darkness in the sky. It drew the first line between order and chaos, between purpose and emptiness. From there, the universe stopped being a blank void and became a story being written day by day, layer by layer, beat by beat. The days that followed were not a chain of random events, but a careful process. Sky and waters were divided. Dry land emerged from the sea. Vegetation rose not merely to exist, but to reproduce, carrying the seed of the future within it. The stars were placed in fixed positions, not for people to worship, but to mark the rhythm of time, seasons, and history. Everything had a place, nothing extra, nothing missing, nothing out of sync. But the most shocking part was not the oceans, not the stars, not the countless living creatures. It was the final decision. When the universe was ready, when order was complete, humanity was created. Not only from matter, but with the breath of life. Not merely one more creature in a long chain, but a being made in the image of the Creator. It was as if the whole universe fell silent. Humanity was placed at the center, not to rule through violence, but to steward through responsibility. Given authority, but not absolute authority. Given freedom, but not limitless freedom. This is what many people today conveniently forget. Freedom only truly exists when there are boundaries. A garden was prepared. Eden was not only a place to live, but a symbol of abundance. Life flowed there. Trees hung heavy with fruit. Needs were met before a human being even knew how to name them. No survival pressure, no fear of scarcity, no competition. People lived in a state we can only describe today as original peace. At the center of that garden stood two trees. One symbolized eternal life. One symbolized moral limits. And right there, the greatest question in human history was placed on the table, even if no one recognized it yet. Can humanity be happy while accepting limits, or will it trade everything just to cross them? Adam and Eve did not yet know shame. They did not understand fear. They were naked, not only in body, but in soul. No hiding, no defenses, no suspicion. That was not weak innocence. That was absolute transparency, a state humanity would later lose and spend a lifetime trying to return to. And from that perfect beginning, a greater tragedy was already quietly forming. Because when people are given freedom, they are also given the ability to choose wrong. The story has not reached the fall yet, but the seed of conflict has been planted. Between obedience and self-rule, between trust and doubt, between contentment and the hunger to become more than what you were created to be. Welcome to Prophetic History Explained. This is not just a place to retell ancient stories. It is a journey back to the roots of humanity. To understand why the world today feels so restless, and why stories from thousands of years ago still speak straight into our hearts. If you feel something stirring in these opening lines, subscribe to support Prophetic History Explained. Your support is what drives us to keep bringing deeper, more honest, and more fearless videos about prophetic history, where the opening is only the doorway and the ending is where truth explodes. There is no moment in human history that is both so quiet and so terrifying as the first moment a person realizes they have crossed a boundary. No thunder, no sky collapsing. Just a small shift inside the mind, but enough to shake the entire relationship between humanity and the one who made them. The most dangerous part of sin is not the act itself, but how it begins. With a soft doubt, with a question that makes you think boundaries were placed not to protect you, but to hold you back. When people chose disobedience, they did not instantly become monsters, but they began to see the world through different eyes. Transparency vanished, trust cracked. What once felt natural now felt like something to hide. Shame did not appear because of the body, but because the conscience woke up in a world not yet ready for it. For the first time, human beings ran, not from danger, but from the one they once walked with. From that moment, sin did not stand still. It moved, it spread, it grew. Cain and Abel were not only two brothers, they were the first picture of a familiar tragedy. When people cannot face the insecurity inside themselves, they try to eliminate the one who makes them feel lesser. Cain did not kill Abel because of an offering, but because his heart refused to face the truth. And when Abel's blood soaked into the ground, humanity learned for the first time that violence can be born from envy, without any need for war. Time passed, and what was once rare became normal. Violence stopped being the exception and became a language. Evil stopped shocking people and became familiar. The world filled with human beings who were alive but no longer knew why they were living. It is here that judgment appears, not as impulsive rage, but as restraint against total collapse. The Great Flood did not only sweep away bodies, it swept away a civilization that had abandoned moral limits. In that world, Noah stood out not because of power or brilliance, but because he still listened. He built an ark in dry land, not because he understood the full plan, but because he believed God's silence was not the same as God's absence. When the waters rose and the laughter of mockery was swallowed, humanity learned a bitter truth. Judgment came not because God changed, but because people went too far. But even after the waters, the story did not end in despair. When the rainbow appeared, it was not only the sign of a new covenant, but a declaration that destruction would not be the final road. Humanity was given more time, more opportunity, more responsibility, and yet the fracture in human nature remained. And quickly, people proved the lesson still had not gone deep enough. When nations gathered on the plain of Shinar, they did not seek worship, they sought a name. A tower was built not to reach God, but to replace him. This time, ambition did not look like violence. It looked like collective pride. We will make a name for ourselves. That sentence echoes through every era. The danger of Babel was not in its height, but in its intention. People did not want to be scattered. They did not want dependence. They did not want limits. But a world where everyone speaks one language and shares one ambition is also the easiest world to destroy itself. When language was divided, it was not only communication that broke, it was the collapse of the illusion that humanity could build heaven by its own strength. From Eden to Cain, from the flood to Babel, a clear curve appears. Sin begins in the individual, spreads into the community, and eventually shapes civilization itself. But at the same time, something else becomes clear. God does not withdraw from history, even when history repeatedly betrays him. Every time judgment appears, it comes with a limit, a promise, a door that has not been completely shut. This part of the story is not meant to make people hopeless. It is meant to make them face reality. Because only when humanity recognizes how deep the fall truly is will it understand why a new covenant becomes necessary. And in that thick darkness, the light of a different call is preparing to rise, not to a crowd, but to one single person. In a world that had just passed through judgment and fallen apart under pride, God did not choose to speak to the masses. He did not call the cities. He did not gather nations. He did not build a new empire to fix history. Instead, he called one person, not the strongest, not the most moral, just someone willing to listen. And from that simplicity, an entirely new chapter of humanity began. Abraham was not called while he was searching for God. He was living a normal life inside a polytheistic society where people worshipped what they could see and control. The call came without a map, without detailed explanations, only a command that was simple and brutal. Leave your country, leave your roots, leave your safety, and go to the land I will show you. Faith here does not begin with understanding. It begins with the first step into uncertainty. That journey was not a straight line. There were moments when Abraham trusted fully and moments when fear rose up. There were wise decisions and weak ones. Famine pushed him away from the promised land. Survival instincts led him to conceal truth. Broken relationships left long consequences. But the shocking part is not that Abraham was always right. It is that the covenant was not withdrawn when he was wrong. The promise remained, not shaking with human mood or human failure. The center of the covenant was never about how great Abraham would become. It was about what God intended to do through him. A lineage was promised not to dominate, but to become a blessing for all nations. But that promise was tested by time itself. Year after year, Abraham and Sarah's aging bodies became living evidence of the impossible. Waiting stretched so long that laughter did not come from joy, but from doubt. Here, faith was pulled to its breaking point. When Isaac was born, it was not only new life, it was confirmation that promise does not depend on human strength or human biology. But the covenant did not end with that miracle. It moved into the ultimate test. On Mount Moriah, Abraham was asked to offer the most precious gift he had received. Not to lose his son, but to face the deepest question of faith. Do you trust the gift, or do you trust the giver? The climb up the mountain was almost wordless. Silence covered every step. Isaac carried the wood. Abraham carried the fire and the knife. When the question came, "Where is the lamb?" it was not only a child's question. It was the question of all human history. Abraham's answer was not an explanation. It was surrender. And at the point that looked like loss, the path of life opened. Not through the blood of the son, but through a replacement. A sign that God does not demand destruction. He demands a faith that holds nothing back for itself. After that test, the covenant stopped being abstract. It began to take shape. When Sarah died, Abraham did not return to his old homeland, and he did not wait for another miracle. He bought a small piece of land to bury the wife who had walked with him through years of uncertainty. That act carried weight. He planted his feet in the promised land, not through conquest, but through commitment. From there, the covenant was not only spoken, it was carved into soil and memory. When it came time to think about the future, Abraham did not seek a wife for Isaac through political ambition or power, but through loyalty to the original promise. The marriage of Isaac and Rebekah was not built on calculation, but on quiet guidance. And when Abraham finally breathed his last, he left not with every promise completed, but with faith that it would continue. This part of the story reveals a core truth. Covenant is not a reward for perfection. It is the path God uses to shape people over time. Faith does not remove trials, but it gives you the ability to walk through trials without losing hope. And from one person willing to walk out into the dark, a new stream of history began to flow, quietly but irreversibly. The covenant was not passed down only through promises, it was forged inside the hearts of the people carrying it. Jacob is the clearest proof. He does not enter history as a straightforward man, but as someone crafty, always trying to grab what he fears will slip away. From birth, he clung to his brother's heel as if his entire life would be shaped by the obsession to seize blessing before it belonged to someone else. That hunger led him into choices full of contradiction. A bowl of stew traded for birthright. A lie traded for the blessing of a blind father. Jacob received the blessing, but peace left him at the same time, because a stolen blessing never brings rest. He had to flee home under threat of revenge, carrying both his gains and his guilt. On that road of exile, Jacob faced real loneliness for the first time. And in loneliness, God met him, not in a palace, but in the cold wilderness with a stone as his pillow. In a dream, Jacob saw a pathway joining earth to heaven, angels ascending and descending without stopping. That was not just a mystical image. It was a guarantee that no matter how far a person runs, the covenant is not cut. Jacob woke up afraid and stunned, realizing that what looked like barren ground was actually a meeting point of the sacred. From that moment, he knew he was not only running from people, he was being pursued by a promise. But knowing is not the same as changing overnight. For years, Jacob lived under Laban's roof and tasted the same manipulation he once practiced. Deceived, exploited, wages changed again and again, Jacob learned the pain of being used. Those harsh years did not only grow his flocks, they wore down the sharp edge of his ego. His household grew, but peace did not. Unreturned love, rivalry between wives, children raised inside tension and unfairness. It became a crowded home with very little calm. When Jacob decided to return, the past he tried to bury rose up again. Esau, the brother he betrayed, was coming with 400 men. Every plan suddenly felt fragile. Wealth could not buy back the years. Apologies never spoken became a weight on every breath. Jacob divided his family, sent gifts ahead, prayed in fear, but deep down he knew there was no road around this confrontation. The night before the meeting, Jacob stayed alone by the river. In thick darkness, a struggle began, no introduction, no clear identity. This was not a contest of muscle. It was a collision between the old man and the person God was shaping him to become. All night, Jacob held on, refusing to let go, as if for the first time he was not trying to run. Near dawn, he was struck in his weakest place. Pain so sharp he would limp. But right there, Jacob spoke a request that no longer sounded like a schemer, but like a man desperate to be changed. He asked for blessing, not to steal it, but to be remade. A new name was given in the dim light of morning: Israel. The one who once grabbed is now the one who wrestled and stood. The wound was not instantly healed. The limp followed him for life as a reminder that real transformation always leaves a mark. But with that imperfect body, Jacob stepped forward to meet Esau. The reunion did not unfold as he feared. Not a sword, but an embrace. Not accusation, but forgiveness. Years of fear dissolved in a single moment as the brothers held each other. And Jacob learned that some battles end only when a person chooses humility. It looked like peace had arrived, but Israel's family still carried deep fractures. The tragedy of Dinah and the rage of Simeon and Levi exposed a painful truth. A father's transformation does not automatically mature the children. Blood was spilled. Honor was used to justify violence. And Jacob realized consequences do not vanish just because one night changed him. He had to move again, not to escape, but to protect his household from cycles of revenge. Back at the place where the sacred encounter first began, Jacob built an altar and heard the promise again. The covenant was reaffirmed not because he deserved it, but because God is faithful. But the journey did not end in triumph. Rachel died, giving birth to Benjamin, leaving a wound nothing could replace. Jacob renamed the child from grief toward hope. like a desperate refusal to let the final loss define the future. Jacob's life shows that covenant does not travel only through shining moments. It is mostly forged through contradiction, failure, and loss. People do not become different simply because they are promised something. They become different because they dare to face the truth about themselves. And from a man who once schemed, once feared, once stumbled, a people began to form, carrying both wounds and promise, moving forward into the next chapter of redemption. Some stories in history do not begin with glory, but with quiet betrayal from the closest people. Joseph's journey is that kind of story, not because he was weak, but because he was different. Among brothers trained for labor and survival, Joseph carried a depth that was hard to name. He dreamed dreams he did not fully understand, and those dreams made him an outsider inside his own family. When he was thrown into the pit, Joseph did not know it was only the beginning. He was sold like property, ripped away from home, from youth, from the arms of the father who loved him most. The road into Egypt came with no explanation, no reminder of promise, only heavy silence. But what stands out is that Joseph did not let bitterness become his identity. In Potiphar's house, Joseph worked with rare integrity, not to prove himself, but because he understood character does not depend on circumstance. When temptation came and then false accusation, he lost everything again. From trusted manager to prisoner, from light into darkness. But this time Joseph did not panic. Prison did not destroy him, because he did not build his identity on outer freedom. He built it on inner faithfulness. In that darkest place, a gift that seemed useless became a key, the ability to listen and interpret dreams. Joseph did not take credit. He did not present himself as brilliant. He repeated one simple truth: understanding does not come from people, it is given. Those prison dreams did not release him immediately. They planted a seed, and then he was forgotten. Time passed in waiting, and that silence became the hardest test of all. When Joseph was finally called before Pharaoh, he did not walk in like a man ready to take revenge on fate. He stood with the calm of someone who learned that everything has its appointed time. The dream of prosperity and famine was not only prediction, it was a warning about how fragile wealth and power truly are. Joseph did not only interpret it, he offered a path forward. And that combination of wisdom and humility lifted him from prisoner to authority in a single day. But power was not the ending of the story. It was the final test. When the brothers who once betrayed him bowed before him, Joseph held what people crave most: the legal right to revenge. No one would blame him if he made them taste the pain they caused. But Joseph saw a bigger picture. He did not deny their sin, and he did not erase the memory of betrayal. He placed it inside a larger order where evil does not get the last word. The tests Joseph put before them were not meant to torture, but to reveal who they had become. Would they still sacrifice the weaker one to protect themselves? When Judah stepped forward to take blame for Benjamin, Joseph knew something had changed. In that moment, the wall built by years of pain collapsed. Joseph did not speak as a victor. He spoke as someone sent ahead to preserve life. Reuniting with his father was not just personal joy, it was the closing of a wound that had stretched across generations. The family of Israel was preserved not by swords, but by food, forgiveness, and vision beyond resentment. Jacob's final years passed in peace in a foreign land, but his heart still leaned toward the ancient promise. When he blessed his sons, he was not only looking at the present, he was looking at the future of a whole people. When Jacob died, fear rose again among the brothers. They thought the father who held them together was gone, and Joseph would return to old memories. But Joseph answered with words that exposed the heart of the entire journey. People can plan evil, but ultimate intention is not in their hands. Evil is not denied, but it is not allowed to write the ending. Joseph lived a long life, watching children and grandchildren grow, but he left with a request tied not to Egypt's power, but to hope beyond time. Carry my bones when you return to the land that was promised. That was not only a personal wish, it was a declaration that history does not end where life is comfortable, but where promise is completed. Genesis closes not with loud victory, but with quiet waiting. A family becomes a nation. Betrayal becomes a road toward redemption, and through every turn, one truth remains. God does not erase suffering, but he turns it into meaning. The story continues because the journey of deliverance is only beginning. The lesson for us today is painfully practical. When you feel your life has been broken by injustice, when you carry the memory of betrayal, when you cannot understand why you are walking through dark seasons with no visible exit, Genesis does not hand you a comforting explanation. It gives you a frame. What you are living through may not be the ending. The evil you see may not be the final voice, and suffering, if it does not make you bitter, can become the place where your deepest maturity is born. Applying that today does not mean passive acceptance or excusing wrongdoing. It means refusing to let the past define the future, refusing to let wounds decide who you will become. Like Joseph, you do not have to deny your pain, but you can choose not to live as its victim. Like Abraham, you do not have to understand the entire road, but you can choose to walk in faith instead of freezing in fear. If you want to keep going deeper into stories like this, to understand prophetic history not only as information but as spiritual depth and meaning for modern life, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can explore more valuable lessons together about prophetic history, faith, the fall, and humanity's long journey toward redemption. And do not forget to subscribe to Prophetic History Explained to support us as we continue creating deeper, bolder, and more honest videos in the time ahead. This journey is not over. It is only inviting you to take the next step,